Happy Fangirl Friday, everyone. Welcome to Fangirl Friday Live, where we talk about fandom, but also unpacking the business behind fandom. My name is Anita Castellar, and I am your hostess with the mostest. And I have this week with my online, interviewing is Matt Buercklin. Welcome, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Anita?
I'm good, good. So tell me, how have you been? We've talked, a little bit in the past, and your perspective this week will be about fandom and retail, right? The retail perspective. But how have you been doing during this COVID time period and the pandemic stuff?
I've been doing good. It's definitely been kind of crazy. I recently switched jobs, moved from New Jersey to Colorado, so that was kind of a crazy time in the middle of
Ooh,
everything. But we're hanging in there, going
yeah.
as good as I could hope for. So
How do you feel about the move during the whole, like pandemic stuff and whatever?
uh,
Was that scary?
it was definitely not ideal. I moved, my parents live in Illinois, and so I made a pit stop there on my way across the country, and that was probably the most stressed out I've been during the whole period, just, stopping in, staying with people
Mm.
that I hadn't been around and everything. Obviously I love my parents and want to be with my parents,
Yeah.
but it was definitely a pretty stressful time. Would not recommend doing it if you can avoid it. So
That's for sure. But well, you're safe and sound now. Very happy to have you here. Sounds like you have a new adventure to talk about, but let's talk about your history, right? Let's go back in time. Get in the whole DeLorean. And who was Matt when he was a kid? What were some of your fandoms? What did you like when you were growing up? I see you have Rey Mysterio in the background there, so
right.
wrestling
uh,
dabbles a bit.
Yeah, it all started. I actually remember the very first time that I ever got really into something was Power Rangers. I
Mm.
remember being a kid, waiting for my brother to come home from school, and an episode of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers came on the TV, and then it's like I just blanked for like 5 years, and then woke up and had all these VHS tapes and toys and shirts, and
Oh
was
boy.
just this huge. I was so invested in it. I don't think I went a day without like wanting to think about or pretend I was a Power Ranger.
Hmm.
It was Power Rangers was just it. Like I very much have huge nostalgia for Power Rangers. And then when I got to be, I believe I was about 8 or 9 years old, I met a friend who had the WWE SmackDown Here Comes the Pain video game. I didn't know anything
Wow.
about pro
Okay.
wrestling. And I was at his house and we popped it in, and I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I would only play as Rey Mysterio because he had the cool mask. He would do all the cool acrobatic tricks and stuff. And so then it was like from that I realized that this was a real thing. Like this wasn't just a video game. And so
Right.
I fell into that pro wrestling rabbit hole, and I don't think I've ever fully come out of that one in the last like 15 years now, I guess, which is
Yeah.
yeah, it's been crazy. But
I'm
I
gonna pause you there
those
just real
yeah.
quick because sorry, just because I wanna point out a couple of things that you talked about, which are common themes when people talk about fandoms and stuff or how they enter into it. Number one, you didn't enter it through the linear, what we call the linear idea of TV or a movie or something. There's lots of ways to enter into fandoms, and you came in through a video game, and then
Yeah.
you discovered it was real, and then you went off and did that. And then the other part is, a lot of people think about the helmets or masks when people put them on. There's like a psychology to that, right? I mean, I don't know if you've ever thought about it like I have, but
Oh no. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, it's a similar thing. I clung to Rey Mysterio in pro wrestling because I thought the mask looked cool.
mhm.
And I didn't realize as a child that he had previously taken off the mask. I was like, oh my gosh, like he could be anybody. But that was like he just looked cool, and it created this neat mystique around him, which is similar in a way to like Power Rangers. Like they are heroes
Mhm.
that put on helmets and you can't see who's underneath them. And I think that's probably a large part of why as a kid I did cling to that stuff. Was it was neat to be able to envision myself as that. Like I could put on a mask or a costume and look in the mirror and it doesn't look like me anymore. Like I
Right.
am that person now.
Right.
So it was, yeah, it definitely, I think that's a great point. Like that was
Yeah.
something very, very, honestly, I never even thought about that. It's like a unique thing that like really like sticks out to me now.
Yeah, that's part of the things when I was doing licensing for Star Wars and such, like people would talk about various parts of like why the villains were more popular than the face, than the Jedi or what have you. And to a certain degree they still are, and it's like it's part of the persona, and partly also with kids, why Halloween costumes are so important and all of that, where you're assuming that persona. Once you put that mask on or put that helmet on, you're not whoever, Johnny Schmo that day. You are Rey Mysterio. You
Yeah.
are, whoever it is, Darth Vader, or whatever you want to be. And for kids, that's really important for their imagination and their imagination play, and assuming that persona, being aspirational. That's all the stuff that goes into the psyche behind playing with action figures or putting on masks or Halloween costumes or whatever. So that's the big draw. But for me, sorry, I wanted to not
No.
derail you, but I wanted to like bring that out, because that's something that I don't think a lot of people really think about, that actually drives some of those those factors.
No, absolutely. And I mean, it was interesting because I think you're absolutely right. And it, for me personally, was a huge driver in being able to picture myself in the stories that come out of these things. And, pretending I was a pro wrestler, imagining I was a
Mm-hmm.
Power Ranger as a kid, and was
Mm-hmm.
something that actually to this day plays a very large part, I think, in why I got so invested in and involved in this industry. I went through the rest of my life, like I was always thinking of stories. Like I'm not really a writer, like I don't, I'm not necessarily the most creative person, but I got very invested in those things. And as I got older, I realized like I'm not gonna be a pro wrestler. That's we're not doing that one. But and you can't be a Power Ranger, you can't be a superhero, but starting to get into, as I got older, like, okay, I don't, I'm not a writer, I'm not an actor, like I'm not going to be able to do any of that stuff. But then around the time I got into college,
Mm-hmm.
I started to understand there's this whole world going on behind all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And, realizing that I could be involved with it without having to, be that the creative behind it, but there's a way I could be involved with it still.
Right.
And so it's really just this desire to change it and sculpt it and be a part of it, like, was a very heavy driving force for me in college in a lot of ways. And then it was kind of around the time when I was in college, actually, and Toys R Us came recruiting at our career fair, that I thought about it. I was like, I still have all my pro wrestling action figures. I
Yeah.
still follow forums with, collectors and things like that are into this stuff. This is something I can do now. Like I can be a part of this. And that was when I met up with that recruiter, and I interned for them the summer of 2017 in their entertainment council merchandising department.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just the coolest thing ever. It was like, it felt very bizarrely like my life kind of slotted into place, just where,
Like you were
something
coming
that I've
home.
always, yeah, like, the things that, I was dressing up with as a kid, the things I was playing with as a kid, I was like, this is real now. Like
Yeah.
I can be a part of this. Unfortunately, it was a very bizarre
Mm.
time period for Toys R Us.
Rip,
And
rip TRU.
yeah, that was not the ideal scenario to come into it. But I was lucky enough coming off of that a friend who I had made while I was interning there had moved to Walmart e-commerce and worked with one of the heads of the entertainment division, and so got me an interview, and I came into Walmart e-commerce the summer of 2018. And I spent my first year in the toy department, not quite where I wanted to be, but doing outdoor and
Oh yeah.
sports toys. So sandboxes, pool floats, things like that. And which was a great way to learn retail without having all the mixed emotions in it that I would later come to have. But it was a great first year, lots of learning experiences. And then after I was there for a year, we kind of reorganized the department, and the action figure buyer role, collectible action figures specifically, actually came open. And I literally went to our department manager and I said, I don't want to be rude, but like, you have to give me that job. I cannot imagine myself missing that job right now. Like, I
I am
think
the
I'm,
biggest nerd on the team. You need to put this to
yes,
work for your business.
yes. I probably almost pushed it a little too far with how assertive I was for, how young I was, but I was like, guys, I will do anything you want me to do if I can have that job. And so
Hmm.
it all, shook down to it, and I landed in the role and had just the wildest year. That would have been the summer of 2019, or the
Okay.
spring of 2019, when I got that role, and then I kept that role until I left Walmart this past summer. But I got to see and experience things and be a part of things that I never like, it was kind of like I'd hit my life's goals already by the time I was
Oh,
25,
wow.
like
You got to
it
raise
was
that
just,
benchmark a little bit more.
yeah, yeah. I was like, okay, what am I, what's my next career objective now? Because I got to see, movie trailer previews. I got to be there and ideate with, ideas for toys and brands and things like that. And I was just like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. So,
Mhm.
uh, I unfortunately just, life circumstances, or not unfortunately, but, life circumstances and, people change, things change. And I've since moved on, now work with a e-commerce agency based out of Denver, Colorado. So now get to, spread my retail knowledge around and enjoy talking to the occasional person on a live stream about toys. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what does an e-commerce agency do? What is that? Define that.
So my company, OneStone, we work with brands who sell products online. So people who work with retailers such as Amazon and Walmart and Target, and a wide assortment of other websites. And we kind of help them run their businesses or figure it out a bit more. So operational issues, content, assortment planning, forecasting strategy. E-commerce is a very new space within the retail industry. And as of I think most people know, this year it became one of the most important spaces in the retail
Yeah.
industry. And so a
Hmm.
lot of people are getting involved with it that aren't entirely familiar with it. There's a lot of nuances, differences between how things are kind of run compared to classic brick and mortar. And so we just kind of help people navigate this space and get them on a path that maybe they weren't so certain about to start.
Well, that's good. So what are the biggest differences? I mean, I think a lot of people don't understand that. So what are some of the biggest differences between a brick and mortar? And that's our terminology, by the way, folks who are listening that don't do licensing or aren't in this world. But brick and mortar means those stores that you actually physically can go to, that they're made of brick and mortar, right? They're actual physical locations. So, what's the difference between a business that's, let's say, toy department, right? That's run in an e-commerce versus, a brick and mortar location?
So I'm glad you called out a category, because it's definitely very different depending on what kind of items you're
Yeah,
selling.
yeah.
But within the toy department specifically, what I would consider the biggest gap and the hardest thing to kind of overcome is that if you're selling an item in a store, especially an item designed for kids like toys are, um, you get lots of foot traffic and you get people coming through who will pick up an item, look at it, their kid can play with it. They have the boxes where you can push the buttons on things. And none of that exists on a website. None of that.
Right.
We can try as hard as we want. We can get the best content possible. But at the end of the day, the kid cannot play with the item before they see it. They can't see how big it is. They can't hear the noises it makes. And that is a massive struggle to try and overcome. And similarly, along with that, when you're in a store, a parent is walking through the store with their child, watching what their child likes, asking their
Right.
child if they want something. When you're dealing with a website, it's a parent online looking for things for their child, which is you have to be able to sell that. And that's very different from selling a child who's walking through the aisle and can pick
Right.
it up and play with it. Um,
It's not like
within
you're
the
going into
toy,
the candy store, right? Like the TRU
right,
previously, where you can go and wander the aisles and think about the things
exactly.
that you want and play and such. You're not doing that online.
Yeah, it's a big challenge to overcome, and I think that it's really changing the way that people have to think about how do we, what do kids like? Why do they like it? How do we get them to like the things that we're making?
Hmm.
It's a very bizarre space, but on the flip side, coming from the collector space like I was, that's one of the more fascinating parts of that is it is very much a toy space. It is 100% classified in that space, but you're not selling to children anymore, and
No.
you're
Hmm.
selling to probably the pickiest consumers of any of any product category in existence. And so it's like you have all of very similar back end issues that you do run into with classic toys, but then when your customers actually know exactly what they want, and if you
Yeah.
don't give them exactly what they want, you will hear about it. It's a very interesting dynamic. It was a very e-commerce is definitely an interesting space right now within that industry.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, we have a very discerning fans, right? They're picky, but they're discerning fans. They know exactly, and they'll tell you if it's priced outrageously, or the quality, or if it's not the right packaging, meaning it won't ship properly, right? If it arrives and their box corners are bent,
Yep.
God forbid,
Yeah.
like, you know.
I could spend 2 hours on a call with you talking about some of the craziness I would see. But I mean, we would run into issues where, so within that space, largely it's one huge difference between, I guess, that and traditional toy
Mm,
space is that within traditional toy space, it's, a lot of, like I said, people walking the aisles, kids can pick out what they want. Within the collector space, they already know what they're looking for. They've heard of it, they know it's out there, they're trying to get it. And with the advent of e-commerce and how big it's gotten, a lot of those sales have pushed to launch events, like, oh, it comes out
mm,
this day at midnight, be there, be square. And that that is a very, very difficult thing to try and work around.
mm-hmm.
It's because I've seen things of people being able to get into the coding on our website and access items early and find names that they're not supposed to know about, figuring out item quantities, like how many they have and stuff. Like, it's just craziness that
Yeah.
I'd go into work the next day and go to my boss and be like, oh my gosh, like they're going to be
Somebody
so mad
hacked
at
our
us.
system.
Yeah, yeah. And like, what are you talking about? And I'd say, they already know all the items. Like, they got pictures out of it, they got names out of it. And it's stuff that we didn't even know people could physically do. It's just crazy. And I'd get online and, be looking at forum posts and things. And it's, oh, found this hidden in Target's database. Oh, Amazon let this slip out or whatever. Like, it's just craziness,
Yeah.
there were days where I definitely wished sometimes that I was handling something a little a little more stable, get the toy, put it on the site, let it sell, move on to the
Mm-hmm.
next one. But
Yeah. Yeah, those were fun times too when I was in Star Wars and licensing, and we were trying to do our, Force Friday, the very first one, and and that midnight release, that was just so much work to keep on top of that. You're right, there were systems being hacked, or you know, whatever worker in the middle of America didn't know they weren't supposed to put it out on the
yep.
shelf yet or something, and pictures would appear and all kinds of different things. Like it was really, it was fun times.
Yeah. Oh,
you know.
yep, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, this past year with Baby Yoda in The Mandalorian, that was the most fast-paced like week of work I've ever had. Just it exploded. Everyone all of a sudden, we have to get product out. And
Yeah.
so it was just getting that set up, making sure nothing went up too early, making sure that nobody could find it beforehand. But it's
Yeah.
this weird balancing act of you have to be there the moment that everyone else arrives, but at the same time, if you're early, no one's happy if you're early.
Right.
It's another huge fight. And so that was just definitely not sure if I'm ever on board for another Baby Yoda. That was a bit much for me.
Yeah, imagine that times like multiple categories, when you're trying to do Force Friday midnight release everywhere. But
Yeah.
that was, I mean, it was really great for the fans though, and you were talking about how now things are being driven towards an event type, like a launch event. I mean, I got to tell you, like Reebok got me with those Wonder Woman, sneakers not too long ago.
No,
I
I
was
get
right
it.
there. I had my alarm set. I was on the site at 1 p.m., getting those gold sneakers.
Yep.
But and I think that's one of the few times I've ever really done that myself, where I was like, oh, I guess I'm too jaded, having been in the industry as well. But I was like, man, those gold sneakers are pretty badass. We got to have some of those.
Yeah.
So I
No.
was definitely one of those people that day. But how do
Well,
we go ahead? No, please go
well,
ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, funny enough, I was thinking before we got on, I would almost compare a collector audience, like a toy collector audience, more to like sneakerheads. Like, they're very similar
Oh,
kinds of
okay.
people, just
Hmm.
different products. But no, please go on.
No, so I was just thinking about, like, with all the noise that there is on the internet, how do you capture somebody's attention enough, to get that messaging to the right people and then have them show up? Like, how do you do that?
That's a really good question, and something that is increasingly difficult, I would say, almost every day that goes by, because you have your Hasbro, Mattel, Funkos, like, you have these huge names that have these massive
Mm-hmm.
advertising networks, affiliate networks, and it's so difficult because there's so many smaller people who make just as cool of products. Like, honestly, you can find the coolest statues when you go to a convention or something like that. There's all these
Yeah.
booths that, I've never heard of these guys, but this thing is awesome. Like, you want to be able to support these people, but how do you find them? How do you know where these guys are at? And so cutting through all the noise can be tricky. What I push the most towards, and this is where I saw a lot of success with when I was with Walmart, is tapping into kind of affiliate networking systems. So forming
Define
relationships, which
affiliate.
is
Define affiliate networking.
so affiliate networks are websites where they will write about or post about or discuss a product. And then they include within their articles links to the product where they will receive some sort of commission off of the item. Probably just good information for everyone listening to know that, most articles you read, if there's something linked to in it, that website is probably making some money off it. Not that that's inherently a bad thing, but that is definitely something that is probably going on there. And so, if you're interested in the space and you want to try to be gaining an audience, you have to get in front of these websites that people are going to, because that's where people learn about this stuff. Is they go to forums, they go to comicbook.com, sci-fi wire, and they read, those people are posting articles and all sorts of things. And it can be easier said than done. Not that, you can just knock on their door and they'll automatically write articles about you, but that's where people see these things, reviewers on YouTube, getting those guys to acknowledge you. There's some surprisingly big followings behind a lot of these different places. When I was with Walmart, I would go actually personally and directly to the action figure subreddit, and I would tell people like, hey, never breaking an embargo, never breaking an but I would say, hey, like, this item is going to be coming out tonight. Here, I'll put the links here whenever you want them or whenever I'm able to. And people responded really fantastic to that. I think that what's interesting about this space specifically is that so many people want to buy so many things.
Yeah.
It's essentially, if you can put it in front of the people, they will buy it. It's just that a lot of people can't find it, and that's an issue with, algorithmic searches and retailers and store retailers only being able to hold so much inventory. There's so much good stuff out there that it's hard for people to find those things. But we would see great success whenever we were able to get, a specific link in, shared out by a website. We would blow through items that previously we weren't doing very well on, or we didn't expect to do very well on, because the company tweeted about it and linked to us, and we didn't know they were going to do that. And we would quadruple our sales sometimes just by doing that. It would be crazy. And so that's, I think, the two biggest things, especially if you're a newer company, is one, you have to get your name out there and have people find you. And then you have to be able to serve it to them on a platter. If you have an item and you're selling it on Walmart or Amazon or Target, any advertising, marketing, any pushes you do, have direct links to the item right there. Make it as easy as possible for people to buy it, because people want to buy it. It's strangely not always as easy to buy things as you would think.
What are some of the obstacles to buying things, you think? Like, is it just algorithms, or is it other things?
I think that's a big part of it, is just finding it. I'll be crawling through the internet, forums and articles and things, and people are just frantic. Like, I don't know where to find it. I can't find the link. Anyone have a link? And people pass them around, like, oh my gosh, here's the link to it now. And that's why I think I would see so much success whenever I would share items with Reddit, or when we get affiliate links out there, is people have the link now. They know where to go from. And so that's one of just the biggest things, because you see people frantically looking for, the new Marvel Legends waves out. The new Black Series waves out. The new DC Universe lines, or multiverse. Like, it's all, people are looking for these things, but you have to make sure that they can find it. And so that's where it comes in with, obviously my head jumps to, exposure on, the retailer sites and things like that, but also within, your own following, as you cultivate, social media followers and things of that sort, provide them links to things. Don't tell people, this new item's out now, go try to find it, give them a link, provide multiple links. It's the actual process of buying it. I think that for a lot of items, a lot more people would buy them if they just knew where to get them immediately.
Yeah, I've used this phrase before, but I had a boss at Lucasfilm who used to say, in fact, Paul Southern, shout out to you if you're ever watching, but he used to say we have to put the stuff in danger of being bought. And I'm sure I'm probably paraphrasing, but that to me stuck with me so much because it's like it's true. You can do everything. You can create the best product in the world. You can have the most innovation in the world, but if you don't tell people about it, you don't put it in front of them, or you don't work with other folks to get the message out to the core person that you want it to be, they will never know. Or it's like putting a light under a lamp, under a cover. You
Yeah,
won't let that light shine out, and people won't get it. So, I think it's relative, to not just be toys or collectibles or, those types. I think it's everything, every type of product that anyone is creating. I think, really the same ideas and tactics that you're saying are relevant to all of them, whether it be apparel or,
yeah.
sneakers, or them showing, like, tell you they got me with those sneakers or,
No, I,
figures. It doesn't matter.
yeah, absolutely. Something that is, I think you're absolutely right. And something that's very interesting within the e-commerce space, especially, is that if you just come out with a new item, if I see the coolest new collector brand out there, they make, let's say, Spider-Man action figures. If they just, they cannot rely on their brand name, they cannot rely on people seeing those items. They have to design their process, their marketing, their content for the website, all has to
Hmm.
be based around the fact that this is a Spider-Man action figure,
Right.
and get it, and be able to surface it on the Spider-Man terms, making sure when people search it shows up, spending your ad dollars on that term and things like that. Because I think that's something that I've noticed a lot within collector spaces, is that a lot of them have really cool brands and they want to leverage this brand, but you don't really have a brand until people are searching for that brand,
Right.
until people are identifying you as, oh my gosh, that's XYZ branded
Right.
collector,
If you're Sideshow or if you're Gentle Giant
right.
or somebody like that in the collector space, then yeah, people search for your stuff because they trust you as a brand and everything you make. But if you don't have that yet, you're starting up, then you're right, go for
Right.
what the product name is that you're looking for.
Exactly. So you have kind of like the dream of being, like Hasbro making Marvel Legend action figures. That's where you want to be. And then you've got, a new person making Marvel action figures. And so then they have to figure out, how do we make sure we're surfacing when people are looking for Marvel items? And then
Right.
you have what are I've ran into a few of these, and one of the most difficult things to be is new company making a new product. And so you
Uh,
have no brand name with no product line. And it's such a shame because there's such cool items. I see a lot of that stuff that I'm like, this is killer. Like I would love for this to be successful, and I want this to be successful, but especially in the digital space, like you have to do so much legwork up front, because there is, to be a little frank about it, like there is no way for someone to find your product if you are a new company making a new product. There's a lot of legwork that you have to
right.
put in to get people seeing it, to get people to recognize it. Like I said, this is very e-commerce heavy focused. On the other hand, then you have the store side of things, the brick and mortar side of things, where if you come out with a new brand and you can get it in on Walmart shelves, you're going to sell out of it, and
Yeah.
you get that brand clout at
That's
that
a
point.
whole nother code to crack, though. I mean, like, just to get a retailer to try, take your call or take your meeting, get in front of them. And this is regardless of retailer, regardless
Yep.
of category, to find the right person, to get the right positioning, it's really difficult. Do you have any advice on that?
I will say that that was largely outside of kind of my realm. I was
Yeah.
not on the brick and mortar side of things, so I did not make those calls. I was not setting up those meetings, but I think a lot of it is, you need to be able to come in and give them the reason to think that you are the next thing. Have
Mm,
A+ content pitch deck. Make sure that your prototypes are just out of this world great. I feel like that all probably goes pretty without saying, but just from the meetings that I've sat in and the things that I was able to absorb from the store side of things, they cannot accept anything less than A plus that they're going to put on those shelves. And so if you think that, this is going to be the next huge thing, be very aware of what your product's potential and current state both are. If you come to them and say, we're working on, a TV pitch for this, it's going to be huge, or we've got, this content coming, if you don't have that, if they can't put it on the shelf and know people will want to buy it, I think you'd be hard pressed to convince a store buyer that, this is the next big thing, but you have no evidence that that's the case, unless obviously you're coming from Disney or Universal or something like that. Those guys have a little bit more sway there, but I think that if you're going that sort of a route, it's definitely, you need to have put in a lot of legwork up front and be able to very confidently walk in that room and say, this is why this is the next big thing, have every answer possible there. And if you get turned down, if you get batted down, that's also kind of the beauty of e-commerce now, is that if you have those resources, if you're doing a YouTube channel series, if you're doing, you write and self-publish, do something like that, your own comic books, you can go on and sell these things without having to have necessarily Amazon or Walmart's buy-in at this point.
That's true.
You might have to encounter them. You'll have to work with them probably, but you don't have to be, a multi-billion-dollar franchise to, have good content that you have a following for, and then be able to leverage, Walmart or Amazon's platform as a way to distribute your product to people.
Right. So that they become tools and means to an end.
Definitely. And so I think, not to get super buzzwordy here, but, for people that are new and have ideas and you want to get involved in this stuff, think about it from that omni-channel perspective. The end goal might be, if we can get this in a Walmart store, obviously that's amazing. Like, people will just buy things because it's in a Walmart. They may not even want it, but it's just sitting in front of them and they'll buy it. But at the same time, you can use e-commerce in so many cool ways to tie back. If you're making a YouTube series, you can have direct links back to your products. You can tie things back directly. You don't have to bank on them finding it. You don't have to hope that they go to a store. You can just link directly to it there.
Right.
You can create, your own mini eventizing of things, use your social media presence and things like that. I would just say, don't get too hung up on, I think that your focus should be to grow your brand and sell product and be successful. And don't be too hung up on how you're going to do that. Approach it with the mindset of, I want people to know this brand. I want people to hear the stories I'm telling and experience this world that I've created. How can I make sure people do that? And you don't have to be tied down to, I have to be in, stores to do that. I have to be in these retailers. Like, there's so many ways to go about it now. I absolutely would encourage people to explore as much of it as they can and, get creative with it, get innovative, don't think that you just have to stick within the mold at this point.
Yeah, the internet has made, everything democratic with a lowercase d, not uppercase D. It's more, everybody can have access to all the tools, the information. There's YouTube is a world of information unto itself, because you can go there, you can search all kinds of information, like, how do I, do this? How do I do that? There are how-to videos for God knows how many things, informative, Reddits, like you said, or articles being written, live streams being done, like, there's a ton of information out in the world, in the internet, and the internet is not always bad. And, there's lots of helpful tools out there. And then there's people like yourself that, you have the skill sets and the information, and you can always kind of guide them along if that's something that they actually want to do, like a more formalized type of relationship with anybody, or you could do it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. One other aspect of it that I think is fascinating now is, the whole Kickstarter world. And I'm sure, tons of people are doing it, tons of people are familiar with it, but that is a really awesome platform. It can get dicey. You have to make sure you can deliver, make sure that, you know what you're doing, be confident. But that is such a cool platform that, can be leveraged for so many different types of things. If you come up with an idea and you're like, I can't get this anywhere, I don't know what I'm doing, but I've got, XYZ person tied to it, this one guy who used to draw for Marvel or something,
right.
He's going to help me draw the comics for this, Kickstarter is an awesome platform for that. And then you even see, this is where, a lot of the big retailers are even coming in. McFarlane did a Kickstarter for a bunch of old school Spawn items that they were bringing back.
Yeah.
Hasbro created the HasLab, where they just, if you'll buy it, we'll make it for you, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And, I think that's another platform that's just super awesome for people to look into. And definitely, it's just another option you can weigh. And ideally, I'm not super familiar with it. I've never run a Kickstarter or anything, but it seems to me like that would be an ideal way to start a brand. If you have the makings of it, you have the necessary content and everything, but you don't have, that deal made or anything,
or tons of funding or anything like that, then you can kind of self-fund that way.
Yeah, exactly. And then once, if it works, that's something absolutely that I think, if you could take it to, a buyer meeting or pitching it to a retailer or something, and you want to do that, being able to say, look, we got funded in, a week on this idea.
Right.
We made $500,000 in a week. Like literally people are buying it before we've made it, that kind of stuff, that does carry clout, and that does carry weight.
It does. Okay. That's interesting. That was going to be my next question. Like, do buyers really care about that stuff? I've never really heard a definitive yes or no on that.
Yeah, there's when I was good friends with a person on our team who did board games, and the board game community, very Kickstarter heavy. That's where most new games, I think, ideate there. Like people come to them, and game studios come up with ideas, like, oh, I want to make this game. They go there and people know, oh, those guys are making another game. And my friend who was working on board games, she would be, crawling through Kickstarter, looking for cool games ideas, reaching out to people, having conversations with the store team, trying to just come up with, what is the next game? What is the next big thing that we can work on? And so, it's, again, nothing's a guarantee, but if you can, prove there's a market, like right here, like the market has already come out, imagine if more people could find out about this item. Stores are definitely an old school form of retail, but there's a reason that they're still around. Like those guys care and they know what they're looking for. And those guys, they spot trends left and right. Like they, like I said, it's all about bringing in, if you're not there yet, showing you have the potential, or showing that this is an item that's good enough. You should be selling it right now.
That's great. What do you think, speaking of trends, what do you think there was some trends in retail right now? I mean, well, we know the big thing right now and now is e-commerce, because that's a huge trend in retail.
My audio out for some reason.
Uh-oh, I can hear you.
What is happening? Sorry, just 1 second. Something's going on.
Oh, the live business. Are you on Bluetooth headphones?
Yeah, I think it was connected to my phone still there. So sorry about that.
This is the world of live stream, folks. This is exactly what happens. But so some of the trends, right? So we're, obviously as a bucket umbrella, retail, e-commerce has become a primary point of sale or way of, reaching people because of everything that's happened with the lockdowns and delivery services and such like that. But, from a category or brands or any other kind of other trends perspective, are you seeing in retail? What do you think is happening there?
That's a really good question. I think that from a branding perspective, it's very interesting, because I think that within this last year, so when you look at things like the marquee brands, like, Marvel Legends, Star Wars Black Series, like all these huge brands people are so attached to, I think that there will gradually start to be less of a domination by them within this space. Because, I mean, you look at this last year, the core Star Wars series is hopefully over, I would say. And then, we have The Mandalorian around now, which The Mandalorian is great. It's an amazing, awesome property. Yeah. It's super cool. The products are great. But, Star Wars, I think it's not going to be as widespread now. I think that is boiling back down to its core. These are the Star Wars fans, like these are the collectors and things like that. Similarly with Marvel, they obviously have a huge slate of projects coming out. It's going to be, next year is just going to be overloaded with Marvel movies, especially following up COVID. But again, I think with, Infinity War ending or Endgame happening, I think that there's still going to be that core Marvel collector. Like those people exist by all means, and I don't think that these brands are going to vanish.
Right.
But I think that it's interesting how in this space it's spread. It's no longer like these are the things people collect. You know, there's like Star Wars, Marvel, DC, like everything that has a brand attached to it is now like collectible in some way. You know, that I think that that's in my mind one of the most interesting trends I've seen is that, and something that Funko highlights so well is that their motto, everyone's a fan of something.
Right.
I
Right.
think that to me is one of the biggest things I've seen is that, you know, now, you know, when I worked for Walmart, I was like, well, I'm a big funk, you know, like I sell Funko. It'd be kind of fun if I get people, you know, pops of things they like for gifts and stuff. And everyone thinks they're cool. Like people think it's fun, you know, they like having that character on their desk or whatever. And then, you know, oh, well, like I got my dad, Sheldon from Big Bang Theory for his birthday. And then I got my mom and Amy from Big Bang Theory for her birthday. And now they have two of them. And I'm certain, you know, if I saw another one that reminded me of my parents, like I'd buy them for that. And like people who don't, you know, don't consider themselves like, oh, I'm a collector, like I'm a diehard this or that, you know, like something that's been on the rise for the last like 20 years now is like people who aren't diehard fans will still show that they're fans. You know, growing up, you know, it became a thing like everyone would wear a Pokemon shirt. You know, someone would wear something with Pikachu on it, you know, whether you watch Pokemon seriously or not. Not everyone, but a lot of people have, you know,
everyone in your circle.
yeah. You know, a lot of people just have like, you know, an Iron Man shirt or, you know, Captain America shirt or something like that. People, you know, the Superman logo has been a staple of pop culture for
long time.
Like
Underoos, forget it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my generation.
And so I just think it's really interesting that, you know, you don't have to be these marquee brands to be something that, you know, people would want to collect. You know, one brand I think is super cool is QMX, you know, quantum mechanics that they do.
Yeah.
They make, you know, they have a lot of the big licenses and stuff, but like it's stuff that, you know, if you're a fan of Deadpool, like you'd buy the Deadpool statue. If you're a fan of Batman, you'd buy the Batman statue.
They have good stuff.
And yeah, I think that it's very interesting to me just how it's kind of like you have these pinpoint, like if we can nail, you know, these hardcore collectors, then that's its own entire huge bucket of, you know, market and passion and opportunity. But simultaneously, you have just all these other people that are casual fans of, you know, everything, every TV show, every movie, books, music. Like, you know, I think that's something that gets overlooked a lot is like people have been wearing, you know, band tees for decades. You know, they've been wearing band tees since music, you know, has been around. Or not been around, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, but now kids, you know, there are folks that are wearing bands that they weren't around when they were, you know, alive.
Yeah.
You know, and people just like the graphic, or they just, you know, like something about it, and they'll wear the T-shirt, and then maybe through there they'll go back and discover, you know, the music of the band.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's almost become sort of like destigmatized or like mainstream to be able to be
permission.
Like, like I'm a huge fan of this. I'm going to walk around in a shirt for it. And, you know, who cares? And, you know, you look around and everyone, you know, is wearing stuff they're a fan of. I think that it's been a big unlock for like this industry in general. And that the fact that, you know, people have been wearing branded stuff for years. It's just that no one ever thought they were like nerds for it because it wasn't like superheroes and stuff. And then, you know, no one would, you know, but now it's become this thing that's like, yeah, like I like this thing. I'm going to buy, you know, this little figure I have of it, or, you know, there are tons of people who, you know, just liked the Marvel movies. Like that was their introduction to superheroes and comic books and stuff that, you know, are like, oh, I'm a huge, you know, like Iron Man fan now that'll have, you know, like a Marvel Legends Iron Man sitting there, you know, they buy. I think that that's one of the most fascinating things about it to me is that people everywhere, like these pop culture brands and phenomena that happen, like they're no longer just like these passing things that only subgroups, these tiny little groups are into. It's like everyone has, you know,
you can dip in and out and you can, you know, participate in whatever level you want. You know, I think about it sometimes as like a layered cake, you know, or a house where you have the foundation, and you build your brand on that. And that's your core audience. That's the ones that
Yeah.
never go away. Those are the ones that you can count on always to support your brand. And they become like what I call brand ambassadors. They'll
Mhm.
talk about your brand for you. They'll promote it. They'll invite people in, those kinds of things. So, there's always that core foundational audience or fan base. And if you treat them right and respect them, they'll always be there. They won't
Yeah.
crumble away. But with each iteration of the brand as it grows, then you can layer on more moderate fans or casual fans, or who comes into it in which way. Like somebody comes into it through the film, somebody comes into it through the comic books, video games, like what you did. So there's always ways to come in. I used to call them portals. There's like portals into Star Wars at that time. I was talking about it, but there's portals into any brand fandom. I mean, there's portals into Martha Stewart as a brand. It doesn't
Yep.
matter, what it is. Those are whatever your brand is, that is your fandom. And your core consumers are the people who follow you religiously. There are people who follow Martha Stewart religiously. Everything
Yep.
she does, they're going to buy it. They're going to touch on that, regardless. So, it's interesting. And if, as long as you curate that, you constantly feed into that, they will be there, and then you keep, building and building, and hopefully you give them what they want.
Yeah.
Right.
No, absolutely. I 100% think that that's accurate. Um, it's just crazy how, everything, I mean, you look around and everything is licensed today. And,
Yeah.
you'll see people, it's almost like a gag or something, but it's so consistent that, people wear shirts that have just some totally unrelated brand logo on them and stuff like that. And so being able to tap into, like you said, like the core foundation of, these are the people that, they're buying this because they love our product and they respect the heck out of it. And then you have just all these other people that, it's still a brand that you can
Mm-hmm.
tap into. And then,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, they dip in and out, they pop in, they'll buy this or that. Funko has like the ad icons line,
Yeah.
that's just like,
The Morton
it's
Salt
literally,
girl killed me.
yeah, exactly. Like it's just tapping into just this pure, unadulterated nostalgia that,
Yeah.
is, that everyone has. And I think that that's only growing with time. And so it's very interesting to kind of see that and follow that and understand what that means for brands in the future moving forward.
Yeah, it's totally true. I mean, what's old is new now as well. I mean, things are always cyclical.
Yep.
But I think that's also the generational effect too. Like if you get to a certain age and then you start introducing a younger person, whether it be a younger brother, sister, a niece, nephew, somebody like that, whether or a child, you introduce them into whatever your fandom is. Sometimes they catch it. Sometimes though, it allows them to have permission to search out other fandoms,
Yep.
and then maybe just start that process on their own into something else that they like, and that becomes their core thing. But
Yeah.
it always is an introduction somehow, and we're spreading the word just like we're spreading the word today.
Yep.
And we're always sharing business. I told you this was going to go quick. We're already down to the wire.
Yep.
So I want to close it with any of your last thoughts and pieces of advice. And also want to make sure that we can find you personally, or find your company. So let us have it. What are you excited about working on in the next few months?
Well, right now, currently we're actually in the talks right now at OneStone with a few kind of collector related companies. And so excited I might get to dip my toes back into that again. But also, brand wise, on my personal kind of like things I'm a fan of level, I'm a big fan of the Power Rangers action figures that Hasbro's coming out with, all the Lightning collection figures. So on a personal level,
that should
that's
be
a
good.
little something I like to follow. But I guess, for companies that are, trying to build a brand specifically, make sure, kind of going back to what I said earlier, understand where your brand is at and focus on getting it to where you want it to be. Don't assume that, you're going to be Marvel. Don't assume that you're
Right.
going to be Ghostbusters. You need to understand, where am I at right now? And what do I want this brand to be? Am I trying to be that big? Do I want to have a niche? Do I want to, am I wanting to just be a licensor or a licensee and just, be making things based off other people's properties. All of these are very valid routes. They're good ideas. And, the industry thrives from all of them. But, it's understanding that, and then, understanding your customers and how to get in front of them to make sure that you can keep it up. There's a lot of pieces to it, but, think omni, think forward, and tell good stories. Tell a good story, and I think that anyone will jump on board.
I would add to that, if you're a young company and you're starting off in this space, also deliver upon your word.
Yes.
Make sure you build your credibility with your fan base, but also with your customer base or with your buyers or whoever. And you do what you say, as in life, do what you say you're going to do, and do it well, and do it on time. Because if you mess up that credibility, people have long memories. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of forgiveness, because there's so many other people getting into your space that, if you wiggle to the left or to the right from the path that you promised that you were going to take with this partner, then you have to deliver, or there's no room for, not too many room for error.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
With that, tell us where to find you, Matt. Tell us you or your personal stuff, or not, or your company.
Yeah. Well, my company is OneStone Solutions. You can find us on LinkedIn. We have a website that I don't actually remember the URL for, but you can find me on LinkedIn also, Matt Buercklin, where a lot of people probably found this at. You can follow me on Instagram at Matt Buercklin. Thanks for having me on, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. Thank you for coming back, and we'll have you back, of course, when you're a little bit more settled into your role, and let's see what else you can be working on then. And any other tips of advice, as e-commerce is not going to go away. I think it's been growing so much in the past few years, but I think it's only obviously now going to be that much more important to people's lives and information. So I think you're uniquely positioned to be able to drop some knowledge for us. So we'll have you back, and good luck in your new role. And, thanks again, and happy Fangirl Friday, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate your time. If you're new, keep finding us at Instagram, and what am I for Fangirl at licensing, Fangirl licensing. And then on YouTube, we are Fangirl Friday Live. And of course, we have our, Facebook page and all of that stuff. So thanks again for tuning in. Happy Fangirl Friday. Matt, thanks again for your time. We will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Bye, guys.